These are strange times. People are saying unprecedented. Although the world has suffered through pandemics before, people have never been as mobile or globally connected as they were at March 2020. At least this is certainly true for me. Nevertheless, whilst my newfound freedoms were suddenly a little hamstrung, I was not actually so upset about the prospect of having to stay home and lead a more quiet life for a while. 2020 in that regard, and perhaps somewhat selfishly, was not so bad for me. Although I will confess that as Christmas approached, I looked forward to the new year with the anticipation of travel and getting back to some new version of normal that would see me leaving the house at least a little more. That didn't happen, of course. Christmas and New Year celebrations came and went, and the lives we had been leading remained largely the same. Only now, cracks were starting to show and frustrations set in. Loved ones who were living across borders became ill and were hospitalised, and we were unable to visit or see them due to travel restrictions. Work stresses set in as the company I worked for underwent restructure after restructure. My physical health started to suffer from the neglect of my usual exercise routine, and then there was an act of buying a house thrown into the mix. As someone who has been susceptible to depression in the past, I found this new way of life tricky to navigate. I couldn't seem to establish consistent routines for working, exercising, and just being home 100% of the time. And whilst my relationship with my partner actually grew stronger during this time, I did find that my struggle to find true alone time started to take its toll on me mentally and physically. I suddenly felt as if I could no longer self-regulate. So, my escape started to morph into the form of overconsumption of content and social media, which in turn led to more and more instances of comparing, which we all know is the joy thief. My perfectionist tendencies also started to resurface, and I found myself creating less and less of my own material, sometimes through sheer lack of time because I had spent literally hours on social media, but most times through feelings of inadequacy and not being good enough. I fell victim to the dreaded vanity metrics, and my frustration started to overshadow the true gift that this path had given me, which was new friendships. I found myself in my own little bubble where I spoke to no one, and I stifled my own chances to create and experiment. I made empty promises to myself and then felt like a failure when I did not meet those promises. I woke up with my phone in my hand to post and check comments on Instagram, and I went to bed with my phone in my hand watching YouTube videos and endless perfume reviews. My overconsumption was sapping me of my will to create my own. Creating is hard. Consuming is easy. And I convinced myself that I was doing it in the name of research to get new ideas and exposure to new perspectives. But the truth was, the more I consumed, the further away I felt from developing my own style, and the more confused I became. It was as though I was squeezing my life into short breaks between bouts of social media consumption. That realization both scared and shamed me. I wasn't living my life at all. What had previously been a link to the outside world during the pandemic had now become a shackle in my everyday existence. And I suddenly realized that I was even more disconnected than I had been before the pandemic even started. Somehow, I've managed to keep moving forward, but after all of this contemplation, I feel that's more of a product of sheer will rather than my plan or desire. The point is, I developed some really unhealthy mental and physical habits in the past year, and I think these subverted my goals and the very genuine plans I had to get myself back on track. In the past, if I found myself developing unhealthy habits, I would simply remove the option to exercise that habit. But this year, I felt I couldn't do that. I find myself having to re-establish healthy habits and practices in spite of my not being able to completely remove myself from temptations. So this is new territory for me, and I'm still learning how to deal with it. 2021 was a year that I thought, perhaps we all thought, that life would return to some semblance of normality. Sadly, it did not, and I found myself becoming impatient and frustrated and even angry. At first, I relished the extra time at home, working in comfy clothes and not having to attend social and networking events. Life seemed simpler until it didn't. Looking back, I now realise that perhaps my ambivalence towards my day-to-day was a result of how I approached the whole pandemic. 1. Making incorrect assumptions about how long it would last without consulting the facts or perhaps not wanting to face them. 2. Using the pandemic and our different lifestyle as an excuse to indulge my addictive nature and justify bad habits. 3. Resorting to living in a fantasy world that ultimately saw me withdrawing even more from those who were still in my presence at home. As the sun sets on 2021 and rises on 2022, I find myself starting to face up to the choices I have made that have led me here. I find myself starting to slowly pull myself back into routines that serve me and hopefully lead me to spending my time more productively and proactively rather than just spending my money and my time. The road back may be slow, but I will endeavour to consciously enjoy the journey and see what new parts it may uncover. For now, I am focusing on my health and my new job and developing my nose using items I have at home and samples and discovery sets that I have stashed away and which have been collecting dust whilst I dashed from one shiny purchase to the next throughout the year of 2021. This is not to say that I'm not open to exploring new perfumes and discovering new loves in 2022, but I really hope to be more mindful and slow in my approach and try to take a more creative angle for sharing these new discoveries with you. I hope you will join me in this journey, and I look forward to spending time with you and connecting with you in the months ahead. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, your patience, and your friendships. Happy 2022.